Welcome back to Beyond the Balance podcast, hosted by Ralston Turner. And today I have a very special guest, someone who is a former national champion, former professional basketball player, also former coach for basketball players, and now turned into a businessman. So without further ado, I want to welcome Marc Campbell to Beyond the Balance.
Thanks for having me, Ralston.
Yeah,
it's
man.
a pleasure to be here.
Appreciate you being here, man. Yeah,
man.
So I don't want to dive right into it, but tell us a little bit about your story. So obviously you're from Raleigh, husband, father of two, career path change. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so from Raleigh, grew up here. Basketball kept me in North Carolina for a little while. I committed to UNC Greensboro and then transferred to North Carolina Chapel Hill. Had a wonderful experience playing there, 2009 national champion, played with so many great players. And then basketball took me overseas. I played a little bit professionally in Germany and Italy and Estonia, and then didn't want to continue that journey. It was not the one I wanted to stay on for a while, and it wasn't being fruitful enough. So ended up coming back, trying to figure out what was going to be next after basketball. And then, strangely enough, basketball pulled me back in. I spent close to a decade as a shooting coach to NBA players. I worked with a lot of great guys, some guys trying to make rosters, some guys on the climb trying to go bench to starter, and then ended up working with some all-NBA players. So I got a full taste of the wide array of the whole league. And then newly family man, two beautiful babies, Penelope and Graham. Penelope's 20 months old and Graham's just 6 weeks. And my pivot really came when Penelope was going to be born. And with the shooting coach, the travel, working for NBA guys, I always said those guys are like aircraft carriers. Everything goes to them. So summers were travel and seasons were home, but that wasn't going to work for our life anymore. So really played around and spent maybe 4 or 5 months trying to figure out what I thought. I had one good pivot in me. I thought my network would respond to one good pivot, but it only, in my mind, it was going to have to be one good one. So I met with a lot of people, different roles, different career paths, and ended up deciding on real estate. And I felt like it was something where it was going to give the freedom of hours that I was used to. It was also going to be uncapped of, eat what you kill. And then there was also something of those industries a lot of people fail. And anytime there's an industry where a lot of people fail, that means that the people succeed. They kind of eat up everything else. And so if you can make it over that hump, get to that critical mass, I thought there was a really awesome life on the other side. And I'm not quite there yet, still chopping, but I do feel like I've caught my feet, and it's been a pivot that has been so cool to do, and one that I thought was really hard to start with, and then every day gets a little easier.
Yeah, so you said a very broad overview of your life, and one of the things I kind of want to touch on is you mentioned or touched on a few chapters in your life. So talk about which one of those chapters shaped you the most, and what exactly was it in that moment where things kind of shifted for you?
I think the most recent one, becoming a father, and all of a sudden, you always think, I love my wife, but you're still always kind of the main character in your own story. And then there's something about bringing a life into the world with your partner, and all of a sudden, the things that you were willing to maybe put your head down and push through a little bit to not see the light and not see how hard it is for somebody else, because you're your own main character. I think it really, that chapter in bringing a life into the world and having something bigger than you, in a way that is kind of undeniable, that's probably the one that shaped me and is still shaping me the most. And that's where my pivot came in of I was working my dream job of helping NBA guys learn how to shoot, going to games, being in the gym the whole time, still being connected to basketball. And my wife and I had a conversation, and I always use this line, but she asked me really poignantly, do you want your dream job, or do you want us to have a chance at our dream life? And our dream life was in Raleigh, raising our kids here, being present for everything, like still having a chance to grow our wealth while still being connected to each other, connected to the kids, not missing stuff. So that chapter that I'm in now, but even the start of it, like just a massive mindset shift that I don't think I was prepared for, or nothing could kind of like let you know, like, hey, this is what it's going to look like until you really experience it.
Yeah. And I think all of us have some of those moments where we kind of shift or have to pivot, and it's something that happens, and you kind of have to draw a line in the sand, right, in terms of like what it is that you actually want, and then what is it that actually comes with sacrificing for that, right? So I'm going to come back to that in a little while, but I want to kind of touch on your basketball journey a little bit. So coming up, playing with Ravenscroft, Kevin Billerman was your coach, legendary coach here in the area and nationally. And then you also played on a national championship team at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Talk about those experiences and what you felt like in those moments created championship teams.
I think both coaches were in the upper echelon of the levels that they were at. So Billerman had come from coaching in college. He was college head coach. And I had played for I was at Gibbons for a year. So I played for a high school coach before, and then going to play for a high school coach, like you were like, okay, this is different. I'm playing for a college coach in high school. Like everything felt different. And then Coach Williams was the exact same way. I had played for Mike DeMitt at UNC Greensboro. And then I went to Chapel Hill and I'm playing for Roy Williams, and you could just feel it. And I think both men, the thing that shaped our teams, that both of them instilled, and Coach Williams used this first practice of every day. It's very famous. Like, it's amazing what can be achieved when no one cares who gets the credit. And I think that applies so poignantly to championship teams, because there's going to be sacrifice. There's going to be people giving in themselves, letting go of some of their ego for the greater good of the team. And we were just talking before about like the things that make you great. There's a line where if you push them to the limit and they go over the line, like those are also the things that pull you back. And just looking at our championship team, like we had guys that were just phenomenal who could be the best player on any college team. And they found, it didn't happen overnight, but they found the mix of like, where is the line where I don't push further than this and make it about me, but make it about we. And I think both teams, both coaches, like that's the biggest thing. Like if you can find that balance of you're pushing guys to be great while also having them understand like it's about something bigger and you do have to sacrifice, that's where special things happen.
Yeah. And so just to kind of reiterate on that point, so in your opinion, would you say the biggest common denominator amongst teams or individuals that achieve success together is the sacrifice?
Yeah, with a grain of salt, because you need everybody on the team that's to be doing the best they possibly can in their role, and also believing that they can do the job. So like if on our team, say there was, somebody who was the eighth man who backed up Wayne Ellington. Well, like if he didn't come to practice every single day believing that like he could be a starter, he could play that role and push Wayne to the limit, like A, he wasn't going to get better to be the best he could be, but B, Wayne wasn't going to get better. And so like you need the internal competition. You need everybody to be pushing as hard as they possibly can. But then when the time comes that it becomes, hey, it's us versus them, you need everybody to then reel it back in and buy into the we over me. So it's a line of like this pushing yourself for the absolute best you can be also pushes the team. But then when that moment comes where it becomes about something bigger than you, like everybody getting into lockstep and moving together. So it's an interesting dynamic, and it's a thin line to walk to actually get it right, because like sometimes like the competition boils over and then it becomes intense. But like as long as there's an understanding and a respect of when the time comes, like we are together, not against each other, then it really is something special.
So played for Hall of Fame coach Roy Williams. Tell us what it was like playing for Coach Roy Williams and What do you think made him arguably one of the best coaches to ever do it?
Playing for him was interesting because I had a specific role. So he used to always say, we would have meetings, and at times he would say, like, I'll treat you all fairly, but that doesn't mean that I'll treat you all equally. And it's a tough pill to swallow, to know, like, hey, like, this is where you stand in the pecking order, and like there will be things, but that's life. Like, that's truly life. Not everybody, it's not equal. It's not, everybody doesn't get the same. Like, there are moments. And so, like, he was always up front. He was always up front. He always knew, everybody always knew where they stood. And so that created a level of camaraderie. It also, like, you always knew where you were at. So, like, you did your job to the best of your ability because you knew what the job was. There was no second guessing. And then the last thing that he did that I think really made him special was he was able to connect. Every day we had a thought for the day. He was able to connect lessons outside of basketball into basketball. And I think a lot of times when I worked with people, I took this concept that he used with a thought for the day, whether it's amazing what anybody can achieve, or he had one that he would always use of, you can see things as stumbling blocks or stepping stones. And there's countless other ones, and I use those all the time. But if you can get somebody to see the connection point outside of what they're doing, it's an amazing tool to help them learn and move forward. And I thought he used those tools all the time, and it was one of the things that always moved our team forward, because you could connect outside of what's on the court and then take the lesson onto the court.
You guys were stacked back then.
He was a phenomenal teacher, not just of basketball. He was a phenomenal teacher. Like, that applies across all disciplines. And then taking those lessons and giving them to the apex level of basketball players, which, like, I think I played with maybe 9 or 8 first-round draft picks and, 13 pros, like, over the time I was there.
Those practices were electric.
So, like, taking those lessons and then giving them to, Ferrari level players, like, they did things with them where you could see guys every single day just taking steps forward. So pretty special stuff. But yes, him as a teacher, applying lessons outside of basketball within to move guys forward. It was the thing he was best at.
So moving on to your career. All right. So as a former athlete myself, one of the things I struggled with was getting into a new career outside of basketball. There was definitely a transition phase there, and I'm going to be honest with you, it was not easy for me. But you've gone from working at a high level in basketball to now shifting gears and building a career in real estate. Just talk about how that transition has been for you.
I think any athlete that says it's an easy transition to start with is just lying through their teeth. It's not easy to start with. And my mentor in real estate told me this at some point within the first month or two, because I was getting frustrated, and he sat me down, we had a meeting, and he was like, look, you're close. He was like, you're not far away, you're close. Like, and taking lessons from basketball of, like, just keep chopping every single day, compound interest, like all this stuff. Like, he was like, you're close. But he laid it out very simple of what probably is the thing that hits every athlete. He said, you're coming from a place where you had control of everything. He was like, you knew what you needed to do. You knew what time needed to be spent. You knew how to learn new things. You knew how to analyze what was going wrong. He was like, you're coming from this place where you were at the top of what you were doing into something new. And he said, your biggest problem right now is you want to have that same control. You want to have that same thing that you had in the previous discipline you were in this one. He said, you have to let that go. He was like, you have to let that go, and you have to be willing to just have a beginner's mindset. He goes, you're okay with failing. That's great. Like, you have grit. You're willing to keep going. He said, you have to let that go, because if you don't, you're just going to beat yourself up mentally to a place where you're actually not going to break through. And to me, that hit, like, really hard at a time where I needed it. It made so much sense when he said it. I could picture like, wow, that is actually what I'm doing. I could feel it, mentally, like kind of being unburdened on me. And then within maybe like 2 weeks, I got like my first deal in the pipeline, got the first one going. And then like once that happened, I felt like, oh man, I can do this. And everything started to roll from there. And there have been little lulls, but in general, like from that conversation and that mindset shift, like nothing changed in how I was operating. I just got better and better at knowing what to spend my time on. And it's one of those things where kind of is like, go back to that feeling of like learning or like growing in the game or growing in basketball, and it's fun to now apply it to something different, and you feel yourself like finding more footing, getting more sturdy, being like, oh, I can do this. Then you start to let yourself get creative a little bit. So that conversation and that pivot point for me really like unlocked my mind and set me free in this new journey.
Yeah, and that resonates with me too, because I think one of the lessons I learned when I got into business was, to your point, but the way I articulated was, in sport, you can run faster, you can jump a little higher, you can try a little harder, and you can probably affect some kind of change. In business, you can't really do that. You just have to put the pieces in place and trust your work. It's just like fishing, right? Like you don't just go out there and say, I'm just absolutely going to catch 10 fish. Like that's why they call it fishing and not catching. But to your point, I always reminded myself, whatever success you had on the basketball court, you didn't start there. Yes. There was a point when, like you said, you were just figuring it out. You were learning new things. There was frustration. Like you didn't start there. So try to tap back into that mindset of what you were then, right? And all the steps that were put into place and all the things that had to happen and all the breaks you had to have in order to get to that finished product, which was success on the basketball court. But that was the way I had always explained it to people.
Yeah. That's the nail on the head. And one thing that I found is like all the stuff that's not physical, like you mentioned jumping higher and this and that, all the stuff that's not physical is going to come with you from the court to whatever business you go into. And it doesn't have to be real estate or finance. It's anything. Like, but all of that stuff is going to translate. Like it's going to hit like your creativity, your grit, like your ability to analyze your failures and learn from them, your ability to look at something creatively after you see the box and be like, okay, what solution can we find in here? Because we come from a world where everything, there's not like football where it's stop, start, or baseball, pitch, hit, stop, start. Like everything is in constant flow. Everything is in flux. And I used to tell the guys I worked with all the time, like there's a solution to everything out there. It is about like being in rhythm and on balance to give yourself optionality to find it. And so like taking that, there's a solution to everything that you're going to do in this business, in my business. But like not being able to do that day one, it kills us because we're like, hey, like we know how to figure this out. So like taking the lumps and like knowing that like at some point, all of that mental stuff, all of the soft skills that you've learned from the game, they're all going to kick in at some point. You just have to get over that first hump to get there, but like it'll come with you. It'll travel.
All right, so moving on a little bit to family and priorities. So I want to go back to something you said earlier, and you said, and I quote, your wife asked you to choose between your dream life or your dream job. Tell us a little bit more about that.
It's a tough one, man. I feel like you have conversations where the people that are closest to you, there will be times where they tell you the truth that you already know. And it's the one that you've been unwilling to admit, to say out loud. You've been internalizing it. You've been feeling it, whatever it is. But the people that know you best, that you're closest to, like if you have them in your life and they're willing to say that to you, it's the thing that can propel you forward. And it was something where I was teetering on the fence. Penelope was born in August. So I was going to take that summer and not do anything. And then I was like, man, like I'm going to be back in the game. Like January, I'll be, talking to agents, prospecting, like I'll line up whoever I'm going to line up for the year. And then we had, during Penelope's birth, like we had an emergency C-section. Recovery was longer than I thought, longer than Allie thought. Like all that was important was getting Penelope and her back healthy. And you blink and it was February. Not only was it February and I wasn't doing anything, like I wasn't even close to out of the woods yet to be on my feet, watching hoops, like prospecting, doing anything. And around that time it became, well, if I'm not in the cycle where I'm bringing stuff in, like I'm not sitting out another cycle. So what am I going to do? Like what is next? And having that conversation and understanding that, leaving for 3 months out of the summer, whether it's like gone for the weeks and back on the weekend or moving our family to LA, like wasn't going to be the thing that was going to be happy. And having that conversation sucked. Because like all you're thinking is, wait, hold on, I'm doing this at the best level I can do it at. We're getting paid great. We're traveling. Like all these things are going well, but like I'm not going to be able to do it. And I have to go back and like figure something else out and start at the bottom. And eventually, when she said it, I already knew it. But eventually, like I got my head wrapped around it, and making that pivot wasn't great to start with. Like what we talked about, like it took a lot to chop and keep going, but it was really freeing because it allowed me to started to have a chance to build our dream life like here in Raleigh, but B, like it gave me confidence to know that like there's a version of me, there's a chapter of me that exists like outside of basketball that like can do things that are going to be really fun and really great, and like that has been empowering to me as well.
Do you ever at any point just think about the other path and what that might have looked like had you chosen it?
Never. It's funny that this past summer when I was starting off in the real estate journey, a GM or a president from a team reached out to me, and they had a top 10 pick, and he was like, I'd really love for you to work with them. And this stuff had happened before, but, there was times where it would happen and I would do everything to try to run it down. I would compromise any conversation or, hey, like I can do it for this price. They'd be like, they would ghost me. I would come back and be like, oh, well, hey, are you guys good? Like I'm just circling back. And, that's so desperate. Like, it's so like, hey, I need this more than you. And so like going through that situation, it dragged out 6 months. And eventually, like I said, I didn't call back on the first ghost, didn't call back on the second ghost. Like I handled the negotiations the exact way I would have handled them if I didn't need it. And I was 10 toes down in real estate. And I was like, if this works out, it's going to be because it's the price point I want, the timing I want, and all this other stuff. And it eventually came full circle where I was sitting on a flight. I was going to Minnesota. And I would usually, when I was going to do any of these jobs, I would text the player before we took off. So I texted the player. I was like, hey, like I land around 3:30. Like, let me know it'll take me about an hour. Let me know between 4:30 and after, like what time you want to get in the gym for the first time. And normally I would do this because it takes guys a while to respond. They're in practice or like they have thousands of text messages on their phone. And so you give them a couple hours to, when you land, like there's a response. Well, this guy pinged me back immediately. And he was like, hey, like my back's not feeling good. I had a fall last night. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be 100. And so normally in my previous life of this being my only job, I would be like, hey man, like, don't worry about it. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, we'll do dinner or this, like, and then if we get on the court, we'll do film. I would finesse it to be like, hey, we're going to make sure this trip happens. I'm going to make sure I get this FaceTime, all this other stuff. But this time I was like, okay, well, I have a career back at home. My wife and my baby are at home. Like, I'm about to leave them for 2 days. Like, I'm not leaving them to go sit and see you and hang for a minute. So I texted back immediately. I was like, hey, like, if your back's not feeling good, like, you let me know. Like, do you want this trip to happen or not? And he was like, well, like, gave some. And I was like, no, like, the door has closed on the flight right now. Like, I need to know, like, do I need to cause a scene to get off? I was like, hey, like, yes or no? Like, do you want me to come or not come? And he was like, no, I don't think I can do it. I was like, no problem. So here I am. Every plane is boarded. I get my stuff. I'm going. And like Allie's pregnant at the time. So I go to the flight attendant. Like, hey, like my wife is going to be giving birth. Like, she's pregnant. In my head, I was like, I'm not quite lying. Like, she's not actually about to give birth. She's about to give birth in like 3 months. but like I need to get off this flight and not cause a scene. So the lady's like, oh my God, you're having a baby? I was like, yeah, we're having a baby. And she was like, okay, we got to get you off this flight then. So the whole plane is boarded. I have my bag. I have everything. They let me off the flight. They refund the ticket. I send the guy a text. I was like, hey, like, make sure you tell, President X, like, this is on you. You chose not to do it. He's like, no problem. Like, the president's secretary called me. I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, don't worry about the hotel or car. Like, I'm not coming. They were like, okay, no problem. Called my wife. I was like, hey, can you pick me up from the airport? She was like, oh my God, what's wrong? What happened? I was like, I'm just not going. She could pick me up. She was like dying, crying. She was like, oh my God, yes, you're here. But like, that was the moment for me where I knew, like, hey, that other path, it just doesn't exist for me. And like, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist forever in terms of like coach my kids' team or do something, but it will only exist on my terms. And before, it was existing on everybody else's terms but mine.
And you said something that I think is interesting, right? Like, it, without saying it, you drew a line in the sand that said, hey, I know what's important to me and I know where it is that I'm trying to go, and I understand what I need to do to get there. But by all means, I think people don't understand time. They just think it's something that's always there and it will always be there. And I don't consider myself to be that old, right? But I have definitely changed my perception on time in terms of like, there's not this abundance of it, and use it wisely, right? Because you don't get it back. You can always make more money, but you can't ever get back the time.
It's the most valuable commodity.
You can't make more time, right? And so I think especially as young professionals, and you mentioned it yourself, like we at times have often struggled with that, right? Whether you think it's I need to build my career, I need to provide, or, I need to do that because I'm good at that, but at the expense of that, that means someone around me, I'm bleeding on somebody. Like someone is suffering for that. So tell us a little bit about getting into fatherhood, just how that changed your perspective on life.
Time, I mean, truly, like you just saying time and fatherhood and all of these things, like those dots connect because there's nothing like having a kid to teach you time management. And like you think you were busy before. You have a child and all of a sudden like you get a free hour or a free hour and a half to work on something. It feels like you have 5 hours. Like you're just a buzzsaw through like knocking down like, hey, this is what I have to do. Like, and truly once you have the second one, it's just an evaporation of like time. Time's a myth at this point to work on anything else like 6 weeks in, but it truly is something that moving into having children, building a career, managing then your personal life, like trying to find connection time with your significant other, like all that stuff has to be managed. And if you just fly by the seat of your pants, if you don't plan, if you're not prepared, if you're not diligent with that stuff, it can really sneak up on you where days will just evaporate and then you're spent. So trying to be diligent in terms of I've now found that my windows are just off hours. Like I was always an early bird, but now I'm up, and this has changed a little bit with a 6-week-old. But in general, I found that, okay, I can wake up at 4:30, I can get a workout in, and then I can work from like 5:15 to 6:30, 6:45, and then, go shower, wake the rest of the house up, do whatever, and be ready for the day. I can do that. And that's an extra pocket that didn't exist, because if you try to get that hour and a half, like during the day or in the afternoon when nap time has gone wrong, like it's a fool's mission. So finding those extra pockets, like being willing to be creative, like plan ahead, like lay stuff out at night, like, prep what you're going to do, and, not send text messages or emails, but schedule text messages during that time, schedule emails. Like I've found that like finding those little pockets, like those are the ones that I feel, propel me forward or set me up to then like lean into connection time, lean into family time, because you're not mentally thinking like, oh, I got to do this or I got to do this or I got to do that.
So one of the things that I learned in my journey, I mean, all my life I wouldn't have said I was a morning person, but as an adult, I am definitely a morning person. And I think it's the only time of my day outside of I just like that there's not a whole lot going on, not a whole lot of movement. But outside of that, it's the one time of the day where I felt like there's not a lot that can go wrong. There's not a lot that can change. There's not a lot that can pivot, right? Like, no one else is up but me. And so I love the mornings. I mean, it's kind of my time to get my mind right and get set for the day. I exercise, I meditate, I, talk to the Lord. I do all those things. But I've heard so many accounts in terms of working a job, being, a father in his 30s, 40s, young professional, about this thing called balance. And some people say it exists, some people say it doesn't. In your opinion, what do you think about balance or work-life balance? And is that something that you feel like can be accomplished, or do you think that's something that is not truly attainable?
My wife always says everything is about priorities. And she tells me all the time, like, if you want something to happen, she's like, you're so hard-headed and so determined. Like, if you want something to happen, like, you're going to try to move heaven and earth to make it happen. And so she uses this in reference to sometimes when I fall short of, like, her list that she has for me. She'll have a list of, like, 30 things to be done. And if they're not done, like, she'll use it in reference to that. But I think that's the key with balance is understanding your priorities. And I think if you put your priorities in order, you can obtain balance. If you have your priorities skewed, and if you have things that aren't really that important, like say it's like video games, you're like, I'm gaming all the time as a dad. Like, well, then your priorities are going to be, out of order in terms of what's really important. Like, no offense to people that game, I guess, but like your priorities are going to be, yes, pretty much offense, but your priorities are out of order. So you're not going to achieve balance. But if you can be honest with yourself, and if you can plan ahead and schedule, these are my priorities. This is where I can find pockets of time to fulfill these other things, to do, then you can find balance. But it doesn't come easily. And it definitely doesn't come without being honest about priorities and then planning ahead about managing your time.
Yeah, very much so. I agree with that too. And I believe it exists. I just believe what your definition of it is, whether it exists or not. And I think obviously it takes work. It's not something that, or someone said this to me a long time ago, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I believe you can. It's just, it depends on, is that cake important to you or not? Like, you, to your point, you'll make time for what's important to you, but also part of the balance in my mind too is just having time for you, because in order for you to have your cup full and for you to be who you need to be professionally, personally, as a husband, as a father, like, some of that has to be the right balance for you too, right?
Yeah. So I found that working out is the thing that's the one thing that fills my cup, that sets myself up to be able to pour into others or be locked in work-wise. And it used to be like, when we were younger, a workout was like you had like an hour and a half in the gym. Like, you had like 4 supersets of things, like a 10-minute dynamic warm-up. Like, you're going through hurdles, activation bands, like the whole 9. Like, there was a point in Penelope's journey where I tried to fit that in. I tried to make that square peg fit in a round hole. And so it became about like, getting mentally like okay with you are not that. Like, you have evolved. There are higher priorities, different things that matter. And so like shifting, okay, like I have 20 minutes to 30 minutes in the morning, mostly like 20 to 25. Like, this is what you can achieve. Map it out, like, keep it simple, and understand that like when that timer is up, like, cut it, because like you filled your cup up and it's going to set you up for everything else. But if you keep pushing, if you get greedy here, everything else is going to domino and it's going to be off.
20-minute workout, that's the hit. That you getting into hit territory.
That's all I got. That's all I had, but it's not really high intensity. It's like whatever the low intensity version, but it goes quickly.
Touche. All right, so looking at your journey, basketball player, coach, father, what are some lessons that you learned along that journey that you say this was applicable to sport, this is applicable to fatherhood, this is applicable to business?
I mentioned one earlier from Coach Williams, and I think that I used it all the time when I coached. I use it all the time in life now, but being able to shift your perspective where you can either look at things as stumbling blocks or stepping stones. And I think being able to learn from failure, being able to apply lessons forward, and that doesn't just mean in the discipline you're in now, but being able to take lessons from basketball, or being able to take lessons from, we were talking earlier of like a contract negotiation when I was playing overseas, or making a decision of like what team to sign with, like being able to look at, what a winner looks like for you and what a loser looks like, and move that forward of like what job opportunity you're going to take. Like the grass isn't always greener, like things like that. Like I think being able to use things as stepping stones, being able to look inward and analyze stuff and then move forward. Like I think that is the biggest lesson that I've taken from basketball or business and apply forward. And it applies to your personal relationships too.
So for someone in this season of life and they're trying to figure out what they're trying to do, maybe it's a big decision, maybe it's a big transition, what would you tell them? What kind of advice would you give them?
I think the first thing I would tell them is they have to be honest with themselves and look in a longer lens than they're probably looking at now. I think they have to look at a longer lens and understand that success is going to come from compounding, not from hitting a home run within like 6 months or 9 months. Like success, real true success is going to come from them just hitting single over and over again and stacking those things up. And I think if somebody's making a pivot, if somebody's doing something that is uncomfortable to think about or transition, looking at it through a long lens, knowing that the lessons they've learned before are all going to apply, but it's not going to come in a month, in 2 months, in 5 months. Like it's going to come later down the road, but just knowing that you can look at it with this compounding interest, this longer lens, this stacking these small wins, that's probably the best thing I would give.
Awesome. Summer's upon us. They say historically that's home buying season. What would you have for advice for any home buyers during this season, or what would you say to anyone right now that's even thinking about buying a home?
Do your work early, whether that's prepping your home, whether that's getting pre-approved for a mortgage and understanding like where your finances are, whether it's understanding like how much do we need to save up to be able to get the house we want in terms of setting ourselves up for a good debt to income ratio. Whether it's you're looking for a house and you haven't started the search yet, I would say go back and look at what has sold in the past 6 months and like how many of those would you be like, oh, we would love to put an offer in on that. Like see how long was it on the market? Like how much did it go for? Was it over ask, under ask? Like do your work early, prep, whether it's prepping your home, whether it's prepping for the mortgage, whether it's prepping to know what it's going to take for you to secure the home if you're a buyer. That to me is the number one thing to do as a buyer, as a seller, like understanding what is going to be coming at you, because if you understand what's coming at you, nothing is a surprise, nothing is scary. It can be exciting instead of stressful.
That's good advice. Ladies and gentlemen, Marc Campbell, thank you for being a guest on the show. Thanks for coming. We'd love to have you again at some point. This was awesome. I hope you guys learned as much as I did in this short amount of time, but we'll let you go. But before we go, just want to say congratulations on the new baby. Congratulations to you and your family. Congratulations on all your success. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you, my man. Thanks for having me.